The trouble started the moment the saloon doors creaked open and Jack Roland stepped inside. The whole room seemed to freeze, as if the Texas heat itself held its breath. Men looked up from their poker tables. The piano player's fingers hovered in midair. Even the thick, drifting smoke paused in its lazy climb toward the rafters. Dustwood had its fair share of cowboys, drifters, and drunkards, but Jack Roland was different. He carried the kind of power that came from owning half the valley and surviving the kind of loss that could break most men. Maryanne Collins felt her hands tremble when she saw him take a seat in the corner. She had seen ranchers before, but this man was built from the same hard land that baked the town each summer. Broad shoulders, sun-bronzed skin, and eyes the color of deep river water. People said his heart had died years ago when the fever took his wife and young son. One look at him now, sitting alone, confirmed it. He looked like a man made of grief and grit. Maryanne tried to steady her breath as she walked toward his table. She was only 19, an orphan, the girl who washed dishes and wiped tables in the Dustwood Inn and Saloon. Her brown hair was pinned tight, her dress plain, and she kept her eyes down, just like always. Dustwood judged her the way it judged every girl with no family name. Quiet. Poor. Invisible. Until tonight. "What can I get for you, sir?" she asked, her voice barely steady. Jack lifted his eyes to her. For the first time in her life, someone looked straight through the shell she had learned to wear. His voice was deep but gentle when he spoke. "Whiskey and a glass of water." She nodded quickly and turned away, heat rising to her cheeks as whispers crawled across the room. Women watched her with tight lips. Men stared with curious smirks. Why was a rich cowboy paying attention to the saloon girl? Maryanne placed the drinks on his table with shaking hands. Before she could step back, his eyes met hers again, clear, direct. "That'll be all, sir," she whispered, "for now." The simple words made her heart stumble. She hurried away, hoping no one saw the flush in her cheeks. But someone did. Across the saloon, Luther Kane leaned back in his chair, his cold eyes tracking her like a wolf sizing up its prey. Kane ran the Velvet Slipper gambling hall and half the trouble in town. He had wanted Maryanne for months, not out of affection, but the need to own what others wanted. His smile curved when he saw Jack watch her. He didn't like competition. Maryanne tried to stay busy, but her mind kept drifting toward the corner table. Jack didn't look like a man who caused trouble, but trouble had a way of finding her. Tonight it found her fast. 3 drunken drovers had been drinking for hours. Loud, mean, looking for something to grab onto. When Maryanne walked by with a tray of empty mugs, one of them stepped in front of her. "Well now," he slurred. "A pretty girl like you shouldn't be working so hard." "I have a job to do, sir," she said, trying to move past him. His hand shot out, gripping her arm hard enough to make her gasp. "Work can wait." Fear jabbed her ribs. She tried to pull away, but his fingers dug in deeper. The saloon quieted just enough for her to hear her own breath shaking in her chest. Men stared, but no one moved. Sheriff Boyd wasn't even looking. And then a voice cut through the silence. She said to let her go. It was Jack. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't push his chair back fast. He simply stood, tall and quiet as a gathering storm. "This ain't your business," the drover growled. Jack stepped forward, slow and deadly calm. A man lays hands on a woman who doesn't want them there. It becomes the business of every decent man. The room held its breath. The drover looked at Jack's steady eyes, at the hand resting near his coat, and fear flashed across his face. He shoved Maryanne away and muttered, "She ain't worth the trouble anyway." Maryanne stumbled, but Jack reached her before she hit the ground. His hand wrapped around her elbow, firm but gentle. "You all right?" he asked softly. She nodded, tears burning behind her eyes. Humiliation, fear, relief. It all crashed into her at once. "Thank you," she whispered. Jack gave a small nod. "No need." Quote. Then he walked out, the door slamming behind him, leaving the whole saloon buzzing like a kicked anthill. Whispers filled the air. "Did you see that? Jack Roland stepping in for the saloon girl. Maybe she's got something he wants." Luther Kane's voice cut through the noise, oily and cruel. "Careful, my dear," he told her as he passed. "You wouldn't want Mr. Roland getting the wrong impression." But Maryanne already knew the truth. The wrong impression had already taken root, and everyone in Dustwood was ready to use it to destroy her. The morning after Jack Roland walked out of the saloon, Dustwood changed. It felt heavier, darker, as if the whole town had turned its gaze on Maryanne Collins and decided she was their new entertainment. When she walked into the mercantile to buy flour, the conversations stopped. Women pulled their children close. Men smirked at her as though they knew something she didn't. She kept her chin down, but every whisper sliced her open. Harlot. Roland's new pet. Housekeeper, my foot. The shame was a constant, burning weight. Dustwood had never cared about her, but now it cared too much. All because Jack Roland, rich, widowed, untouchable Jack, had defended her. In their small, cruel world, that meant only one thing. It meant she belonged to him. Maryanne scrubbed the saloon floors harder than ever, trying to disappear into the wood. But no amount of work could drown out the humiliation of that night, or the stares that followed her every step. A week passed. A week of sleepless nights. A week of wondering why Jack had stepped in at all. A week of praying he would never come back. And fearing he might. Then, one quiet afternoon, the saloon doors swung open, and there he stood. Jack Roland. He looked different in daylight. More real. More solid. He still carried that quiet authority, but there was something else in his expression that made her heart thump painfully. Purpose. He walked straight to the bar where Silas, the owner, stood polishing a glass. "Silas," Jack said calmly, "I'm here for Miss Collins." The whole room went silent. Maryanne froze. Her rag slipped from her hand and fell to the floor. "For Miss Collins?" Silas repeated, his face twisting in confusion. "I'm offering her a position," Jack clarified, looking across the room until his eyes found Maryanne. "I need someone to manage the house and kitchen on my ranch. Good pay, good work." The words hit her like a physical blow. He wasn't asking in private. He wasn't whispering a secret promise. He was making it public. So public the entire saloon now held its breath. Her heart pounded. Leaving Dustwood was all she had prayed for. But to leave with him? To live under his roof? The rumors would explode. Silas swallowed hard. That's for the girl to decide. Jack didn't look away from her. "What do you say, Miss Collins?" Her throat felt tight, her mind a tangled mess. I need a moment." He nodded once. "Take your time." She ran to the small room behind the kitchen, her thoughts spinning. Stay in the saloon. Scrub floors, dodge drunken hands, be the talk of the town forever. Or leave with Jack, move into a house ruled by silence and a man she didn't understand. A man who scared her and comforted her at the same time. A man the town already believed she had given herself to. She looked around the small room, the cracked plaster walls, the single straw-filled cot. This wasn't a life. She took a deep breath and stepped back into the saloon. "Mr. Roland," she said, her voice trembling, "I accept your offer." Jack's eyes softened, just a flicker, but she saw it. "Good," he murmured. "We leave in an hour." And Dustwood erupted like a kicked beehive. By the time she stepped outside with her small cloth bundle, half the town had gathered. At the front of the crowd stood Eleanor Kane, Luther Kane's wife. Dressed in silk, hair pinned immaculate, face sharp enough to cut stone. "Leaving us already, Miss Collins?" she asked sweetly. "One would think you'd have the decency to be discreet." Maryanne's cheeks burned. "I'm going to a respectable job, Mrs. Kane," she said quietly. Eleanor laughed, a cold, cruel sound. "A respectable job? As a bachelor's housekeeper?" "My dear, we all know what kind of housekeeping that is." The other women tittered. The shame rose like fire inside her. Then she saw Jack waiting by the wagon, watching the scene. He didn't interfere. He didn't rush to rescue her. But the look in his eyes, cold, steady contempt for the women who tormented her, gave Maryanne strength she didn't know she had. She lifted her chin. "My shame is my own business," she said. I'd rather be a housekeeper in an honest man's home than the wife of a man who runs a crooked card table." The crowd gasped. Mrs. Kane's face flushed red with rage. Maryanne turned her back and walked toward Jack. He helped her into the wagon, his hand firm and steady. No words passed between them. But something shifted. They left the town behind, rolling into miles of open plains that shimmered with heat. Silence filled the wagon, but it wasn't hostile. It was heavy with questions neither dared ask. Why had he rescued her? Why had he chosen her? What did he really want? She didn't know, but she knew one thing. Whatever she was heading toward could not be worse than the life she left behind. Jack's ranch rose like a fortress from the land. Solid stone, sturdy wood, windows that reflected the wide, empty sky. A lonely place, a wounded man's shelter. Inside, she felt the coldness immediately. Clean floors, silent halls, a house without laughter, without touch, without life. Jack moved through it like a ghost of the man he once was. Days passed. He rose before dawn, worked until dusk, ate in silence, closed the study door each night with finality. He treated her with respect, polite distance, and loneliness settled into her bones like winter. So she made a decision. If she could not thaw his heart, she would warm the house. She cleaned, she cooked, she baked bread until the air smelled like home. She found a patch of dry earth near the well and began digging. "What are you doing?" Jack asked one afternoon, watching her struggle with the hard-packed soil. "Making a garden," she said, wiping sweat from her brow. "The soil's poor. It can be made better." Their eyes met, a spark of something unspoken. That night, under a Texas sky filled with stars, he told her about his wife's garden, about the roses she once grew, about the grief that made him rip every root from the earth. It was the first time he let her see the man beneath the silence, and Maryanne felt something inside her tremble, a tiny opening, a seed, a beginning. The night the storm rolled in, the whole world felt on edge. Dark clouds swallowed the moon, lightning slashed across the sky, and the wind howled like a warning. Inside the ranch house, Jack and Maryanne ate a quiet supper, the kind filled with words neither dared speak. His knuckles were still bruised from the fight in town. Her heart still carried the sting of Kane's cruel insults, but under all of it was something deeper, something neither of them could ignore anymore. After supper, she knelt in front of him with a basin of warm water and gently cleaned his cut hands. Her touch was soft, careful. His eyes followed every movement, his jaw tight with emotion. "You shouldn't have fought them," she whispered. "They spoke of you," he said, his voice low. "There are some things a man cannot let stand." Her heart squeezed. She finished wrapping his bandages, but her hands lingered on his skin. "Luther Kane offered me marriage," she said. Jack went still. "What?" "In town the other day. He said he'd give me his name, that he could protect me, that you put me in a cage." Rage flickered in Jack's eyes, pure, cold fury, but she lifted her hand to his cheek to stop it from spilling over. "I told him I'd rather be in hell." Jack's breath caught. She looked up into his eyes and the truth came tumbling out. "I feel more free with you than I ever felt with anyone." Thunder cracked above them, the house shaking with the force of it. Jack cupped her face, his thumb brushing her cheek. "All I have is this land," he said slowly. "This empty house, and a heart I thought was buried in the ground." Her lips parted, her breath unsteady. "If you'll have it, it's yours." He kissed her then, a deep, reverent kiss, filled with every broken piece of him he was finally willing to let her touch. He lifted her into his arms and carried her toward his room, the firelight flickering over their shadows. But before he reached the doorway, a crash exploded outside. A horse screamed, and the storm wasn't the only danger. "Stay here," he ordered, grabbing his rifle. "Bolt the door." He disappeared into the darkness, and the storm swallowed him whole. The minutes dragged like hours. Every thunderclap sounded like a gunshot. Every flash of lightning lit the room with fear. She paced the floor, holding her breath, praying. Then, 3 heavy knocks. Their signal. She threw the bolt open. Jack stumbled inside, soaked, furious. "They tried to burn the stable," he growled. "Kane's men. The rain stopped the fire, but they'll be back." He checked all the windows, the locks, the shadows, his jaw tight with a deadly calm. He was freezing. She grabbed a blanket and wrapped it around him. As she pulled it close, he caught her hands against his chest. His skin was cold, but his heart beat strong beneath her palms. "Maryanne," he whispered. She looked up. "I almost lost you today," he said, his voice raw. "Every time they touched you, every word they said. God help me, I have never felt a rage like that." Her eyes filled with tears. "You didn't lose me," she said. "I choose you." Something in him broke open. The last wall fell. He kissed her again, slow yet desperate, pulling her closer, as though he feared she might disappear. He carried her to the bedroom, laying her gently on the warm quilts. The storm roared outside, but inside, the world softened. Every moment felt like new breath after years underwater. She remembered the night on the porch, her tearful confession. "I'm still a virgin," she had cried, broken by shame. Tonight, when he touched her cheek and whispered, "Not for long, sweetheart," it was not a taunt, it was a vow to cherish her, protect her, love her, finally make her feel chosen. The storm outside could rage, Kane's men could circle like wolves, but in that room Maryanne felt something she had never felt before. Safe, wanted, home. The attack on the barn was only the beginning. 3 nights later, under a full moon, Kane sent armed riders to take the ranch by force. Shots lit the dark. Fire exploded in the distance. Ranch hands scrambled for cover. Maryanne watched from the pantry window as Jack directed his men, rifle flashing in the moonlight. When a second barn caught fire, and she heard a child's terrified cry, she didn't hesitate. She ran into the night. Through smoke and flame, through heat that felt like it could peel her skin from bone. She fought through the burning barn, lifted little Mateo into her arms, and drove the trapped calves out through the chute as the roof collapsed behind her. She saved them all. When Jack saw her carrying the child out of the fire, his knees almost buckled. He met her halfway, pulling her into his arms with a fierce, trembling relief. "I told you to stay inside," he whispered into her hair. "The calves needed saving," she said softly. "And the boy." His hands framed her face. He looked at her as though seeing her for the first time. "You're the bravest woman I've ever known." The sheriff arrived with a posse. Kane's hired guns fled, and Dustwood, now fully aware of Kane's corruption, rose up to take their town back. Kane was defeated. Maryanne was vindicated. And Jack? He was no longer a man who lived in the past. 1 year passed. The ranch healed. The town healed. And Maryanne became the heart of it all. Her garden flourished. The house filled with laughter. Jack smiled again. Really smiled. The ghosts that haunted him faded. One golden evening, Jack found her in her garden. The sky glowed orange and purple. He knelt in the soil she had brought to life. "Maryanne Collins," he said softly, "you saved this house. You saved me. Will you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" Tears slipped down her cheeks. "Yes," she whispered. "Oh, Jack, yes." He lifted her in his arms and spun her as laughter filled the air. Together they climbed the hill behind the house, hand in hand, watching the sun sink behind the horizon. The ghosts were gone. The rumors were gone. They had fought for each other, bled for each other, chosen each other. And now they belonged to each other. Forever.